I've actually been a subscriber to Young Company Finance for many years. So in my previous job where I was managing the growth fund for the Prince's Scottish Youth Business Trust, obviously the businesses that I was working with, they all wanted to grow. They were looking to access funding from the fund that I was running, but also looking to access funding from elsewhere. So for me, Young Company Finance was a brilliant publication to let me see who was raising funding and from where, the types and amounts that they were raising, and the stories around that. So it helped me to get to know the landscape in Scotland. It helped me to understand who I should be referring my businesses to, and I would then be able to ascertain as well what funds were interested in what type of business, and I could use that knowledge.
It probably was when I first moved up to Scotland, so around four or 5 years ago, and it was definitely one of these really good things which just gave you an idea of the activity going on in Scotland. And this was one of the reasons why we moved to Scotland was we've got the institute here, so the Royal Institute, great for animal genetics, but the other one was a very active investor ecosystem, and investors who get it, investors who get life sciences and they get agriculture, and Young Company Finance really kind of validated that thinking.
So early days, I remember when I was starting to raise investment for Appointed's first rounds between 2014 here, and you'd be going and doing, all of the pitches, stomping the ground. Everybody had Young Company Finance on their coffee table. So it was like, you got used to sitting in a waiting room, really nervous about having to go in and do your pitch, and you'd have a look at Young Company Finance and see who had just raised a seed round, or look at this company here, they're raising millions. And so I have such a fond memory of that. It was like my first kind of peek behind what potentially was coming ahead.
So it's been around for a long time, obviously 25 years. Our activity has been underway for the best part of 20 years, or 20-year anniversary this year. And during all that time there's been a consistency of Young Company Finance in the landscape, both from the provision of data and information to allow us to see what's happening in the market, but the conference is particularly useful in the ecosystem to bring the players together, obviously the local players, but also those further afield as well, which allows us to engage with the market and to hear what's of most interest to the investors that are out there in supporting Scotland.
As a Young Company Finance magazine, as an organization, I think it's a solid anchor which circulate that information of success stories, keeping the track of data, but it touches also people to say, if I need the data, where can go?
As an organisation, I think again, echoing a number of those points, the data set is incredibly valuable, but being that sort of one-stop shop for deals within the Scottish ecosystem is incredibly valuable for founders like myself to tap into.
Well, I think it's got a hugely important position in the Scottish ecosystem. I think what it really does is it enables people to stay in touch with actually what's happening. It's got a very broad reach. It's very hard, I think, to keep across what is happening in a country like Scotland. You need people who are out there at the cutting edge, connecting with this, connecting with that, and bringing all those links together and then providing you with that information. Young Company Finance are independent and engaged and working at grassroots level as well as a higher level.
For a lot of these early stage businesses, as we're investing into them, there's very few newspapers would run the story, but we've got a story to tell here. So Young Company Finance as a forum, and your monthly newsletters and deals that were being done, and being able to put that out to the world was hugely helpful to us and to our investing portfolio. Every time I do a deal, I will write up a piece and I will put it to yourself to say, here's a deal that we've just completed. Could we see it in the monthly newsletter? That'll go out to the great and the good.
Young Company Finance are probably one of the few people that were here before us. So we're about 20 years and you guys are 25. So what has been really good is actually seeing the publication evolve over the years as the market has went from strength to strength, but also actually supporting during those challenging times and making sure that the chins were up and that actually wasn't a gap in what we were doing. What I really like is that kind of step back, because quite often, entrepreneurs and also investors alike, we've got our heads down doing the deals, And then it just sometimes gives you that wake-up call to see, actually, look what we've achieved. And that's what's always really quite sobering when you read Young Company Finance. It's that pat in the back that nobody else kind of stops and does.
From there, the kind of yearly conferences that we would attend, and a number of our investing businesses would attend. And even some of them have been then speakers later on, as the businesses have grown.
Thank you very much for supporting this event. Obviously, for everybody in the room and for people like me, this is a critical element of the Scottish ecosystem, and it's fantastic to get everybody of this calibre in the same room together to debate and discuss the key challenges around startups and scale-ups, and exits is obviously the key theme today.
I found today's conference exceptionally good. I think the content was very good, the selection of the founders and the practitioner stories that they shared. Because it's one thing to do it as a profession and advise, but do it and then talk from that experience, that storytelling. So I think that was perfectly placed.
So I think the blend of the practical skills and steps that are required to be able to build a company, married with the real life stories, is invaluable. And there's not many conferences, to be completely honest, that have that perfect blend. So I thought it was incredibly interesting, and the right balance was definitely struck, so well done for that.
Yeah, I found every single talk there was something for me to take away. Like, everybody that you wanted to speak to was in the room, and so it was like loads of great chats, there was such energy, so yeah, I loved it.
I've been following Young Company Finance for quite a few years. I get the newsletters. Yeah, it was a really interesting conference. It was good. We had a display and we got quite a lot of interest. Lots of people coming to chat.
We had a stand this year. We had a stand last year as well. It was an opportunity for us to connect with investors, to talk to people about Smash and what we're doing, but also to have a learning session, to sit down and listen to people who have successfully exited, and how they did it, and why they did it, and what they learnt that they would do again, and what they learnt that they would never do again. All of that information is invaluable for us as founders. So for us, it was a really useful experience.
I first kind of was in Sterling with Young Company Finance 2 businesses ago. Hadn't raised money before. What was amazing was that I just started to learn. I got exposed to the ecosystem. I got exposed to the funds talking about what they're looking for. I hope I've learned a lot of those lessons, and I hope I've made those connections.
So it's a great forum for early stage and growing, particularly tech businesses, to meet, network, learn. It's a fantastic environment. And again, this is where creating that kind of forum for all the angel syndicates to know each other, even though they don't work in the same space, it's really quite helpful. And those kind of networks in Scotland, I think they're pretty strong. The syndicates are really good at communicating with each other, and that doesn't happen by chance. That happens through organisations like Young Company Finance, its conference, and having that kind of joined up writing. It's really important, and I think Scotland does it pretty well.
I think it does give you a window into the investment community in Scotland, and the advisory community as well. So if you want to know and understand more about the community that you're working in and raising money in, then I think it's an essential publication. So, we don't hesitate to renew our subscription every year, and we love reading the stories that you publish in Young Company Finance.